as they run into the home straight, and Norway drifting off the inside, closed down by Crystal Ocean. Enable making rapid progress down the outside. Crystal Ocean goes on, but Enable is quick to challenge. Then Hunting Horn and Valdgeist. Enable on the outside of Crystal Ocean, and these two are kicking away from Valdgeist in third, racing on towards the final furlong. And what a battle between them. Enable near side. Crystal Ocean will not give in on the far side. They go head to head, toe to toe. She's just in front. Enable racing up towards the line, and she'll win a second King George. What a race!
Welcome back. This is the Racing Rundown Podcast, wherever you may be, however you may be making this part of your day. Thanks so much. I'm your host, Jack Sargent. We are loaded today. We got a lot to get to, and hopefully under 2 hours, and I do want to try to get the iTunes listeners a Vic Stauffer interview, so we're going to try to see if we can fit that in. If not, I may have to squeeze in one of my shorter interviews. But anyway, we have so much on the docket for today. A lot of stuff happened last weekend and a lot going on this weekend. So definitely a great weekend for horse racing coming up after a lot happened last weekend. So I want to lead off with Enable. Right now, Enable is the best horse in the world. I mean, I shouldn't have to say this because it should be common knowledge at this point, but Enable is, at this point, the best horse in the world. And I think, you know, we all loved Winx, but how could Enable not be, at the end of the year, the world's top-ranked racehorse? And I think that's the way it's going to be. Enable 100% the best horse in the world, and she showed that in beating a very, very good horse in Crystal Ocean. And I think looking ahead to this Breeders' Cup Turf, it is going to be a fabulous race with Crystal Ocean, Enable, and depending on who else decides to come over for the Breeders' Cup. I know, don't want to slight the American horse, Bricks and Mortar. You know, I'm going to say about Bricks and Mortar, this is the wrong year for him. I'm going to say that he's one of the best turf horses that we've had in recent years, and he's not going to win the Breeders' Cup Turf. I'm going to say that right now. And I know he's going to win a couple more stakes races through the end of the year. I'm not going to project his exact track, but I think he's going to win a couple more stakes races. I definitely think he wins the Sword Dancer, and then we'll see what he does after that. But Bricks and Mortar, I just don't see a way that he wins the Breeders' Cup Turf this year. You got Crystal Ocean, who won the Prince of Wales Stakes over a very good filly Magical, and you know, I talked about Crystal Ocean very briefly when I talked about Royal Ascot, how Magical came up to him and he turned her away. This just shows how much better Enable is than Magical. And Crystal Ocean literally took the world's best horse on, was overmatched, and he took her all the way down that stretch at Ascot Racecourse, and he made Enable reach down for everything. And I know Frankie didn't hit her with the whip or anything like that, but that doesn't take away anything from Crystal Ocean. 100, I have so much respect for this horse after seeing him perform in that race, and hopefully he goes in the Arc, and it's going to be a great Arc de Triomphe this year with Enable, Crystal Ocean, maybe Magical will go in there, I don't know. Not going to project that 100%. I think most likely Bricks and Mortar would stay away from that. I see no reason why they would go across the ocean just to get him beat. But not to badmouth Bricks and Mortar, who is a very, very talented racehorse in his own right. But back to Enable for a second. 12 career wins, 11 of those coming successively. 9 wins in grade or Group 1, whichever continent it was in. But 9 grade or Group 1 wins. A dual Oaks winner, a 2-time winner of the Arc, a 2-time winner of the King George, and a Breeders' Cup winner, the first winner of the Arc to win the Breeders' Cup Turf in the same year. So, Enable, and I shouldn't say in the same year, just the first winner of the Arc to then win the Breeders' Cup. So, Enable 100% is the best horse in the world. I am not going to listen to any kind of debate on that. Enable 100% is the best horse in the world. And going into the Breeders' Cup, it is going to be a fascinating, fascinating Breeders' Cup. Okay, now let's switch back over the pond to racing up at Saratoga this weekend. I want to get to the outstanding performance that Shancelot had in the Amsterdam Stakes, but I do want to first touch on Imperial Hint's win in the Alfred Vanderbilt. That was a statement win by Imperial Hint. But I do not want to start this off by burying Maitoli. Maitoli had a very poor race, yes. But Maitoli had a couple of excuses. One, the rail was dead at Saratoga. Two, Maitoli got stuck in a speed duel that he didn't necessarily want to get stuck in. Now, does this necessarily mean that Maitoli is invincible or is really at the same level that we thought of him prior to Saturday? Absolutely not. I think a little bit less of Maitoli, but I'm not ready to bury him. Maybe I have no idea what they're going to do with him, but I think going forward, the option is on the table of him going in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, obviously with that win in the Met Mile, which is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. So they have options going forward, and they have other races to run in. But Imperial Hint won his second consecutive Alfred Vanderbilt, and like Larry Colmus said in the race, is back. And that's what you could say about Imperial Hint. He was very highly touted going into the Breeders' Cup Sprint of 2017. Ran second, a good second to Roy H. Hasn't really, I have felt at least, returned to the hype that he had in 2017. I didn't really hear as much about Imperial Hint going into 2018, but that could just be me. But Imperial Hint never really fell off. I don't want to say that Imperial Hint is back after falling off. He was third last year in the Breeders' Cup and third in the Dubai Golden Shaheen. But he's back in the win column and definitely in the conversation for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Obviously with Roy H. that has been on the shelf basically the entire year. I know he won a race in January, but Roy H. has not been anywhere to be heard of, and very, very hard to see him returning. And even if he does return, and you guys heard this from Jay Pridman, I'm not sure whether or not you heard this from Jay Pridman, but Jay told me that if he does return, it's going to be off of a one race into the Breeders' Cup, which I don't like him in that position, being completely honest with you. But let's give credit to Imperial Hint. That was a statement win by Imperial Hint in a weekend of statement wins. I don't want to immediately dump the achievement that Imperial Hint had, because that's what I'm seeing from a lot of people, that, Imperial Hint, who ran a fantastic race, broke a track record in that Alfred Vanderbilt, now being tossed aside by the newcomer Shancelot, which we'll get to in just a couple of minutes. I just want to let everyone know that we should not begin to bury Imperial Hint because he didn't win by as much in a different race, a race that he didn't run in. So Imperial Hint definitely is back on the map, and I think the Breeders' Cup Sprint this year is going to be one of the deeper divisions in the Breeders' Cup. I think obviously the turf is going to be loaded and deep. The distaff is going to be deep. I think it's going to be the turf, the distaff, and probably the sprint is the number 3 deepest race. So it's a very interesting Breeders' Cup Sprint looking forward. But just because Shancelot, and I'm not discounting Shancelot, I'm going to get to Shancelot in a second, but just because he ran an amazing race doesn't mean that we should automatically drop Imperial Hint less than 12 hours after him running a fantastic race in the Alfred Vanderbilt. That wasn't as visually impressive, but it was in track record time and over a horse that many people thought was invincible, including me. I will say I thought Maitoli was invincible. So Imperial Hint, a statement win, back on the map in a very loaded sprint division for the Breeders' Cup this year. All right, now that we've got all this spiel out about Imperial Hint, let's get to probably what is going to be a very unpopular opinion of mine. I have said already enough in the past couple of minutes that I think the performance by Shancelot in the Amsterdam Stakes was amazing. It was a sensational performance, but I am going to say this, and this does not mean that I don't think that Shancelot is a horse that has talent. I'm not saying this at all, but let's just pump the brakes on Shancelot for a minute. Let's just dissect that race a little bit. Again, Shancelot ran a great performance, but the one thing that I want to say about that is that let's just relax a small little bit. That was in a grade 2 race against average horses. It wasn't in the Alfred Vanderbilt against Maitoli and Imperial Hint and top horses. It was in a race of a bunch of horses like Lemniscate, I remember from the Kentucky Derby Trail. Nitros and Honest Mischief are two other horses that I can look at. You know, this isn't like he ran against the best sprinters in the country. If he did this against the best sprinters in the country, then I would 100% agree with all the hype off of him. Should we be awe-inspired by this performance? Of course we should. It was a great performance by a horse that definitely has a lot of talent. And I'm not saying that Shancelot is not a horse that I'm going to pick in the future, but I just want to caution everyone. This isn't like he ran against the best of the best. He had a great performance in a grade 2 race against average horses. So, going forward, definitely have him on your radar. I will probably pick him the next time he runs in a big uptick in a stakes race, probably the Forgo. I could see him running the Forgo, not necessarily 100% sure that he would do that, but if he does run in the Forgo, obviously I'd have to look at the other horses that were running, but I would definitely highly consider taking Shancelot. But just because he won it, like, I'm going to say this again, and this is going to be the theme of this episode, but just because Shancelot won a grade 2 race against average competition, again, this wasn't like he's beating top 3-year-old sprinters or top older sprinters. This was a 3-year-old race for males, 6.5 furlongs, yes, but it was an exclusive race to 3-year-olds and not highly touted 3-year-olds either. So, credit to him on the performance. It was a great performance, but I'm not ready to hand him the division off of an albeit fantastic performance, but a performance in a grade 2 race against average 3-year-old male horses. I'm not ready to hand him the division. But that being said, I think that Shancelot, again, the 121 Beyer speed figure is the highest in 12 years for a sprinter. So that's obviously eye-popping. 12.5 length win is eye-popping. There's a lot of eye-popping stuff about that. I'm just saying, relax a little bit. Imperial Hint ran a dynamite race in the Alfred Vanderbilt, and it's like Imperial Race might as well have finished last in that race. The way that Imperial Hint was tossed aside for this new horse. And I've seen this a lot with horse racing, and a lot of these buzz horses that have this one signature stakes win. I saw it with Hidden Scroll, and that wasn't even a stakes race. So I'm not, again, do not take this the wrong way. I'm not saying that Shancelot is going to be going to be a bust, but pump the brakes just a little bit. That was a fantastic performance from a horse that has a lot of talent and definitely a lot of upside. I'm not saying don't pick him. I'm not saying he's not going to win another race, and I'm not saying he's not going to be the favorite. But just don't hand him the division off of a win in a grade 2 against average 3-year-old competition. Alright, now if anyone is still around after that, if you haven't clicked off for being so angry with the way that I just dissed Shancelot, let's talk about our new sponsor. These people have popped up on Instagram. They are making wristbands for to support your local track. The wristbands say "We support horse racing" on one side and "Support your local track" with 4 horses spanning the 2 messages. They are on Instagram at Support Horse Racing. I will give a link to these on all the social medias. You can send them a DM. Tell them that Racing Rundown sent you. And yeah, so you can get a wrist. You can also get a keychain. So either a wristband or a keychain. Really good bracelets. Eventually, I received 2 from them when I talked to them about acquiring one. And eventually we agreed to do some promotions on the podcast. So I received 2. We will be giving one of those away at some point. So you have that to look forward to. I want to now get to the Jim Dandy. Like I said, if anyone's still around, let's get to the Jim Dandy. Once again, Tacitus was the best horse in a stakes race, and he didn't win it. And this time, even more than the Belmont Stakes, he had a legitimate excuse. He went to his nose at the start, and like I said earlier, the rail was dead at Saratoga this weekend, and Tax got a good run in the stretch, and, you know, Tax definitely is an improved horse, but let's not lose sight of, once again, Tacitus, and I don't think Tacitus has run to his full ability since he won the Wood Memorial. But once again, Tacitus, for circumstances outside of his control, obviously he stumbled at the start in the Jim Dandy, had a wide post position and was wide for the entire Belmont Stakes and had traffic problems in the Kentucky Derby. Tacitus, I don't think, has run to his ability since the Wood Memorial. had the ability, was probably the best horse in the Belmont Stakes. Just Sir Winston made a better move, and if he didn't stumble in the Jim Dandy, I think Tacitus wins that race. Now, that being said, Tax definitely did improve, and I think Tax is going to be on the map for horses that you consider going into the Travers. But I think that Tacitus, once again, was the best horse in a race that he did not win. Alright, now I want to quickly shift gears and talk a little bit about War of Will. What happened to him in the Jim Dandy? I have never really been the biggest fan of War of Will, but I'm not going to use this as a time to harp on War of Will, because I don't think it's 100% the fact that he doesn't have talent. Of course, he has some talent because he won the Preakness. Now, the one thing that I will caution everyone on the Preakness is that the Preakness was not against the biggest quality field. Everfast was a long shot. Owendale is good at grade 3 level, but unproven at higher levels of competition. And really, I don't need to go through every single one of the horses in the Preakness, but it wasn't the best Preakness. There was not a lot of talent in the Preakness, so it's easy to see why War of Will, who was obviously the best horse in that race, won it, because there was not a lot of talent elsewhere. So I think that played into a part as to why War of Will won the Preakness, but obviously he has to have had some kind of talent in order to win a race of that caliber. But the board speaks badly at War of Will. He has lost 4 of his last 5 stakes races and has not been the best horse in any of those. I know the Kentucky Derby was the Kentucky Derby. War of Will was interfered with badly, so we can draw a line through that race. The Louisiana Derby, I also draw a line through because it was a little bit of an experimentation race. You can also draw a line through the Belmont Stakes and the Jim Dandy. Why? Because War of Will was the only horse to run in all 3 races of the Triple Crown. And the Triple Crown takes a lot out of horses. And you saw a horse like Exaggerator, who also ran all 3 races in a Triple Crown, and was really only able to win on a sloppy track. I'm going to say that about Exaggerator. Really only able to win on a sloppy track. The Triple Crown took a lot out of him. He obviously won the Haskell because it was on a wet track, but never really did anything afterwards, and was a tired horse in the Belmont Stakes, was not up to form in the Travers, and not up to form in the Pennsylvania Derby. So I think War of Will, the thing with him is he ran in all 3 races of the Triple Crown. 3 races in 5 weeks at 3 different distances, 3 different tracks, takes a lot out of horses these days. They are not as durable, for better or for worse, as they were years ago. And that's why you don't see a lot of horses run in all 3 legs of the Triple Crown. That's why you'll see horses run in the Derby, skip the Preakness, run in the Belmont, horses run in the Derby and the Preakness, and then not run in the Belmont. So I think really the case that it is with War of Will, and I don't want to say draw a line through all his wins, but you can draw a line through the Louisiana Derby because I think that was an experimental race. And obviously the Kentucky Derby was what it was. And I think you can attribute his win in the Preakness to the fact that he was the best horse in a race of marginal competition. And the Belmont Stakes and Jim Dandy, I think he's still reeling from the Triple Crown. So War of Will, definitely not time to bail on him. I'm not bailing on War of Will. I just think that he is tired. And I don't think he's going to win the Travers. I will not take War of Will in the Travers. And depending on what else he does later in the year, probably not going to take him. But War of Will, I think, needs a rest. And I think could come back in his 4-year-old year and be a very solid horse. So that's it for talking about the Jim Dandy. That's it for Saratoga. Let's just quickly talk a little bit about what happened at Del Mar. Sistron and John Sadler Horonis Racing, the Hot Hands, is in the Breeders' Cup with a win in the Bing Crosby Stakes. Also, Paradise Woods and Love Force, the 2 horses that I had picked to be in that race. And I said it was a 4-horse race because at the time, only 4 horses were confirmed for the race. So I went off of what I had because I needed to make the video. I'm sorry that the amount of horses running in the race were not updated, but the 2 horses that mattered, Paradise Woods and Love Force, were both defeated, and Paradise Woods was not really that good in defeat. Love Force was 3rd, Paradise Woods was 4th, but it was not really that encouraging of a race. And it was long shots at Del Mar, But Ollie's Candy was actually very impressive with the way that she won that. First time on dirt since June of 2018. So last year and a month. She won the Summertime Oaks then. Since then switched to turf. She was second, seventh, second, and now back to dirt. She won her second race on dirt, second lifetime start on dirt, 2 for 2. So Ollie's Candy is in the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and what the California division I think is a little bit weaker. I think that like I said, the California division weak. I'm not really sure how they're going to factor in going into the Breeders' Cup this year. But Ollie's Candy put herself on the map, like I said, with Shancelot, although I would definitely consider Shancelot so much of a better horse than Ollie's Candy. But Ollie's Candy, definitely one to look out for. Probably is going to factor in some of the later races at California. La Force, don't know what happened with her. Paradise Woods, not surprised. She's ultra inconsistent. So with all that being said, we've gotten to all the races that happened this weekend. I want to now segue into an interview that we did a few weeks ago with Oaklawn Park track announcer Vic Stauffer. This is going to be a long episode, but I have time left on the allowance, so that's why I'm going to give you Vic Stauffer interview right now. We will have that. I will be back to talk about the races upcoming this week, which there's a lot of them, so there's going to be a lot discussed, but we will be back to discuss those after the interview, so enjoy that. Alright, that was Vic Stauffer. Great interview with him, one of my favorite people in horse racing, one of my favorite track announcers to listen to. Now we're going to get to all the stakes races that are coming up this weekend, and I should mention at this point, I forgot to earlier, but I will be at Saratoga this weekend with the podcast, and this time we will be full journalism mode there. We're going to try to get to talk to as many people as possible. I'm currently working stuff out. I'm not going to promise anything right now, just in case anything doesn't materialize, but we will be there, and I will later in the week be tweeting out stuff, so definitely 100% if you would like to come and talk racing with me at Saratoga, I will 100% be open to that. I will be in the paddock at points, so if you want to see me in the paddock there, if you want to meet me anywhere at Saratoga, just you can shoot me a DM, send me an email, whatever. But I do want to get to all the stuff that is going on this week, and I first want to get to one of my favorite horses to talk about. I've talked about him a lot, and this horse, of course, is Mr. Money. So let's talk about Mr. Money. Obviously, a lot of people are very disappointing because we thought that Mr. Money was going to be going in the Travers, and that is now not happening. I think that Mr. Money is a very good horse that I've said all along is going to sweep up all these grade 3 races. Now, I know the Indiana Derby was what the Indiana Derby was. It was a riderless horse that caused a lot of chaos, but in the end, Mr. Money was able to win that race. There are also some horses coming back from the Kentucky Derby Trail and Plouquet Parfait off of a failed try on grass in the Belmont Derby. We can just forget about that, but Plouquet Parfait, I don't think he should be as high as he is. He's 6-1 right now. I've never been a fan of Plouquet Parfait, and I never will be a fan of him unless he wins a race and changes my mind. I don't think that's happening. 8th in the Kentucky Derby, 6th in the Belmont Derby, 13th in the Risen Star. His only win this year has come in the UAE Derby after he fled the United States after poor performances in the Lecompton Risen Star Stakes. And I said then, smart decision by Imperial Racing and Brennan Walsh, recognizing that their horse was not good enough to win a race on the American Kentucky Derby Trail, took him to Dubai, won a race there. But will not be taking Plouquet Parfait. Math Wizard and Mr. Money are the two horses that I think we should be looking at very strongly. Math Wizard was very, very affected by the riderless horse in the Indiana Derby. And probably, if the riderless horse is not there, wins the race. Mr. Money, I have been on him for a long time. I think I will still take Mr. Money in this race. But Math Wizard is very intriguing to me. But Mr. Money off of 3 consecutive wins in Grade 3 competition, I'm ready to take him right now. Some other horses in the race, if you're looking for any kind of value, like I said, Plouquet Parfait, he's not going to be your value play. He's 6-1, and he's probably going to be high, that high because people saw his win in the UAE Derby, and I think are going to overvalue it. Grump's Little Tots was second in the Easy Goer to Majid. So that's a play if you're looking for something like that. You've also got Chess Chief at 15-1, a horse that is probably going to be used in a trifecta or exacta. So that's the kind of horse that you're looking. That's the kind of horse you're looking for. But I want to defend the decision of Mr. Money, who is my pick for the West Virginia Derby this weekend. I want to defend the decision to go to Mountaineer and run there as opposed to going in the Travers. I will say, always put your horse in the best position to win. And as an owner, a business person, if it's a $500,000 stakes race, then go for it. Don't cave to the pressure of running in the Travers just because Mr. Money's won 3 consecutive Grade 3 races. The Travers is going to be a very, very loaded race this year. There's going to be Maximum Security, there's going to be Tacitus, there's going to be Game Winner, there's going to be a lot of other horses that I'm not going to try to predict right now, but there's going to be a lot of horses there. And not saying that Mr. Money isn't a good horse, but that's not the best place to start off Mr. Money in Grade 1 competition. I think the Pennsylvania Derby, which is going to be a lot less loaded than I think the Travers will be, is a better spot for him. So I think the Pennsylvania Derby is your go for Mr. Money in a Grade 1 race. Not the Travers. Do not run him in the Travers. I said that as soon as the idea for the West Virginia Derby came about. Do not run him in the Travers where he could very easily get beat. This is a position that is much easier for him to win in. So, Mr. Money, great decision by the connections to go in the West Virginia Derby. The Saratoga Oaks is also this weekend, so the second leg of the New York Turf Tiara, so the Philly Triple Crown on the grass, is the second leg of that is this weekend. But I first want to touch on the National Museum of Racing Hall of Fame Stakes at Grade 2 that is also on Friday. Sambeya for Todd Pletcher and Luis Saez was fourth in the quick call at Grade 3, his first start on turf. I will be taking him in the National Museum of Racing Hall of Fame Stakes. God, that's a mouthful. But I'll be taking him in this race because the hot hand Luis Saez has been winning a lot of races at Saratoga and almost won the Belmont meet and almost won the Gulfstream meet. So Luis Saez has been winning a lot of races. I will be taking that horse in the National Museum of Racing Hall of Fame Stakes. I want to also say that I will be taking Concrete Rose in the Saratoga Oaks. That looks like it is going to be a very easy spot for her. Shamrock Rose, make no mistake, made a statement by winning the Edgewood Stakes on Kentucky Derby weekend, and then showed everyone that she was the horse to beat when she won the Belmont Oaks. So I will take Shamrock Rose to win that race over, frankly, not the most talented field. Coral Beach was in a race at Royal Ascot, fourth in that. Happen is trained by Aidan O'Brien. Ryan Moore was sixth in the Coronation Stakes. Oladon, eighth in the Belmont Oaks, and her Royal Highness was second in the Open Mind, which is listed. And Kelsey's Cross was third in the Martha Washington. I think it's a very easy call for this race. Shamrock Rose is the class of the field. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time saying that. Shamrock Rose is the class of the field. So now let's get to the 3 stakes races that are happening this Saturday. The first one that I want to talk about, the Grade 3 on the card, is the Troy. That brings World of Trouble, he of a second place finish in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint to Stormy Liberal last year, and he who has not finished out of the money in his career and can win on both surfaces, dirt and turf. I think that this is a very good spot for him to come back in. Already this year, he's unbeaten since December of 2018. He has not lost this year. Won the Gulfstream Park Turf Sprint, which was moved to dirt that day. Also the Carter Handicap, the Twin Spires Turf Sprint, and the Jaipur Invitational. World of Trouble, I think that this is his year. A lot of people have been talking about it like World of Trouble is going to run in the Breeders' Cup Sprint on the dirt this year. I have no idea why you would do that. You have Stormy Liberal, Breeders' Cup winner last year that seems to be on the shelf. Hasn't really done much. We haven't heard from him since he ran in Dubai on Dubai World Cup Day. Stormy Liberal, I think, is vulnerable this year, and I think this is finally Roy H's time to win a Breeders' Cup race on the turf. It already has a win in your in slot there, and once again is going to be running on the turf. I see no reason why he runs in the Breeders' Cup Sprint on the dirt this year. But like I said, I think that this is his year, and 100% I'm going with him all the way to win this Troy Stakes. So there's my stance on World of Trouble. I think that this is finally his year, and in a loaded year of turf runners, but not necessarily turf sprinters, I think that this is World of Trouble's year to shine. And let me just say before I get into the test stakes, this is a very loaded weekend of racing. This is a great weekend of racing. If you're in New York, highly suggest you go to Saratoga either Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, because this is going to be a great weekend. The test stakes is probably going to be the best. I shouldn't even say that, but it definitely is going to be a fantastic race on the card. It brings back Break Even, the undefeated runner for Brad Cox, is winning everything. Just won her last race out on the turf, is 6 for 6. Has won 5 sprint races on the dirt. Looks for her 6th, looks for her 7th total in the year, and she's going to go up against Serengeti Empress, a horse that ran a poor race in the Acorn Stakes, and I shouldn't say poor, she was second. She was well beaten by Garena in that Acorn, but she was in a toxic speed duel. Garena ended up running that race in 1:34 and change. It was a track record for the mile at Belmont Park, and Serengeti, excuse me, not a track record, a stakes record, but Serengeti Empress, I always felt, as soon as her win in the Kentucky Oaks exposed her ability to free run on the lead, was going to be cut back. And I think that this is a great spot for her to be cut back. Trainer Tom Amoss knows what he's doing. This filly can flat run. When she doesn't have any kind of bleeding or any issues with her health, she is awfully, awfully good. And I am going to be hard-pressed not to take her because I really like Serengeti Empress. You also have Royal Charlotte for Chad Brown, the usual Chad Brown company, also undefeated, has raced at Monmouth Park, won the Hysterical Lady. Last start out, July 5th, won the Victory Ride over Cookie Dough. And then you also have Bellafina, her of a 5th place win in the Kentucky Oaks, was the favorite, was my pick, got beat, cuts back in distance now. And to top it all off, you have Cove Fife, who has been a little bit less of a blazer, but still is in the conversation for horses in the race. Of course, she's trained by Chad Brown. She's always going to be. But you also have Geltrin, the long shot winner of the Devona Dale Stakes, and a couple other horses that have placed in races. You also have the Alama North Please Flatter Me winner. So, Please Flatter Me, the winner of the Alama North. I said that wrong. I'm sorry about that. Take Charge. Angel was 9th in the 8 Bells. And Message for trainer Bob Baffert was 7th in a maiden race at Del Mar back in September of 2018. Has not raced since then, so probably going to be a big long shot in the race. Trenchtown Cat was also 2nd in the Princess Rooney. So very, very loaded race. Of course, at the top, I should say, you've got Break Even, Serengeti Empress, and Royal Charlotte. Royal Charlotte and Break Even, both undefeated horses. Serengeti Empress, though, not to be outdone. Very talented horse when she is not bleeding or not having any adverse health factors. She is awfully, awfully good. So I will be taking Serengeti Empress in that race, but I might change that depending on how I feel about Break Even and or Royal Charlotte. The big race on the card, the Breeders' Cup Classic Win in Your In race, the race that we have been waiting for since the Met Mile, which saw McKinsey get beat in a performance where he didn't really have everything going for him. He got trapped in traffic, and by the time he got through, was good enough. He was good enough to win that race. And that's the other thing that I'm going to say about Maitoli is Maitoli. People are not seeing the fact that Maitoli was very easily beatable. If McKinsey had had a place to go, he would have won that race. It also features 2-time Dubai World Cup winner Thunder Snow, Yoshida, the horse that switches between turf and dirt as much as I switch between picks. Vino Rosso, off of his win in the Santa Anita Gold Cup at Santa Anita, comes back for the first time. Imperative, the old man who has been around since the American Pharoah days. The 9-year-old gelding last start out was 6th in the Carl Hanford Memorial, has run on dirt, turf, synthetic, everything. So this horse has been running since 2012. He was a 2-year-old then. This horse has been doing a lot of running, and he is going to try for his first win in a stakes race since 2017. So Imperative is going to be a very big long shot, but giving him the screen time because Imperative has been a horse to win a lot of races in the past. And the newcomer, Preservationist, a Suburban Handicap winner. Last time out, caught a lot of eyes in that win and is going to be catching a lot of people's minds on deciding whether or not they're going to play him. And I think Preservationist is a horse that you should definitely look into playing. But I think the class of this race is McKinsey. McKinsey ran a winning race in the Met Mile. He just didn't have a place to go. And it's always unfortunate when the best horse doesn't have a place to go in a stakes race like that. I think McKinsey rebounds, wins this race. A little distance subject, but has been able to win at the 1.125 distance before. I don't see him having a problem here. It is a deep race, though. You have a two-time Dubai World Cup winner, Grade 1 winner, Yoshida, who has had some talent in the past, not necessarily this year. Imperative runs a lot of races. Don't think he's going to necessarily be on the winning side, but also Preservationist off of that eye-catching win in the Suburban Handicap. So you have all those horses running. This weekend, like I said, I will take McKinsey, distance subject and all. And finally, the last race we're going to talk about, not the last stakes race this weekend, but the last race that we're going to be talking about is the Saratoga Derby, the second leg in the New York Turf Triple, which is the Colts side of the Turf Triple Crown. I'm going to be taking Digital Age in this race, even though the winner of the Belmont Derby, Henley's Joy, is in this race. I think that Digital Age got caught wide because of the wide post position wasn't the most desirable. I think he's going to rebound. He was fourth in that race. Not terrible. 1 3/16 on the turf. I like Digital Age in this spot. Of course, the caveat is if he doesn't get a good trip. Henley's Joy was an upset winner, but I don't think Henley's Joy is a super long shot in this race. I think he's definitely going to be one of the favorites, and definitely a horse that you should look into taking if that is your type of play, if you like to play the recent successes. So, Digital Age is my pick. Also, Seismic Wave, who was catching a lot of attention before that. Even worse, or suffered even more from the bad trip. Digital Age, if he gets a good trip, I think wins the race. So, with all that being said, marathon episode and all, this is the final episode that we will have in June. Of course, I will be releasing a bunch of previews on YouTube for these stakes races because I could not hope to cover them all in depth in the time that I allotted for myself. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you enjoyed the Vic Stauffer interview, and hope you don't hate me too much for my opinions on Shancelot. But anyway, if you would like to follow us on social media, please do. Follow us on Twitter at Rundown Racing, Instagram at Racing Rundown Podcast, subscribe to us on YouTube at Racing Rundown, and go check out Support Horse Racing Wristbands, our new sponsor. So I will see you guys in all the videos that are upcoming this week later, and also I will see you at Saratoga. So I will release the information on that later on this week. Shoot me a message, DM, whatever, if you want to meet up at Saratoga, whatever. I will be 100% for that. So, thank you for watching, and I will see you either in the upcoming videos on YouTube or next week, or if you decide to meet up this Saturday. Thank you for watching.
The stretch, and it's Jody still there. Concrete Rose runs up alongside at the 8th pole. Newspaper of Record did not go on. Concrete Rose strikes the front. Jody is back into second, and finishing fast is Just Wonderful down the outside. Cambier Park is moving with her, but it is Concrete Rose. Concrete Rose romps in the Belmont Oaks.